Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to T-Minus, presented by 321. I'm your host, Daniel Melick.
I'm Jeff Malchek.
Trevor Theodore.
Ali Sheik.
And today, we're talking about Comic-Con.
Mostly.
Well, not really.
Briefly.
A little bit.
What was y'all's favorite announcement and or trailer and or just thing from
Stranger
Comic-Con?
Things too.
Hell yeah.
Stranger Things too,
With
for
the Michael
sure.
Jackson feature.
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah.
When the voice started coming in, I was like,
I think that's the best part of the show is their soundtrack that makes it feel so nostalgic. Not that I
Vintage.
was alive in that era.
I was
going to
say, nostalgic of what?
So I hear.
Nostalgic of what, Ali?
for
That's
that
the
time I
question.
watched Ghostbusters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So this podcast is going to be a little different. Ali, the intern, that's his new nickname, is a college student. And
Is it a nickname if you're just stating a fact about somebody?
We'll call him AI.
Sure.
It's like Jeff the Bearded Guy.
Still, it could be
Still
a
a
nickname.
name.
Still a name. It's just a descriptor of who
More
you
like
are.
an adjective.
Whatever.
Anyway.
Anyway, yeah, so you're going to kind of go through, ask some questions that you want answered and what maybe the audience wants to answer as well, and see how it goes.
All
It
right,
might get kind of
sounds
weird.
good.
All right.
All right. So the first thing I put is how can I connect what I'm learning in school to this industry? Because there's a significant gap with regards to digital marketing as opposed to what's being taught in school. So how can I connect what I'm learning in school and make that match up with what the industry requires?
That's a good question.
Again, so I guess you need to find out for yourself through the Google if whatever they're teaching you is still relevant. I think
Right, and a lot of
that's
it's
gonna be the
not
hardest
because
part.
it's 3 or 4 years outdated.
Right, and I think that's the hardest part. So, is it whatever you're learning now? Can it translate into what we're doing now?
Right.
That's tough because there might be aspects of what you learn that still translate, but until you're actually in it, you can't really tell. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
from your perspective as a student, you're just like you're guessing that it all still
It's still
translates.
relevant,
It's
right,
still
yeah.
all relevant. So, yeah, I guess for you, it's self-knowledge or self-education to understand kind of the trends that are moving in this industry, and seeing how it relates maybe.
I guess I was kind of asking these questions because I have a couple more from the mindset of somebody who has just started their like really major specific classes, doesn't have any experience within a job setting, but wants to kind of get on the right foot instead of just going out and doing anything. That's kind of the mindset I was asking
Right.
these questions from.
Yeah, I think it's kind of taking your classes with a grain of salt, knowing that right off the bat that what you're taking is going to be a little bit outdated. But my best advice is to if you're in college and you know that you want to be in this industry, if you want to be in advertising, digital marketing specifically, it's never too early to start going out and getting internships.
Right.
There's a lot of experience issues and age issues that sometimes might prevent you or make it a little bit more difficult. But as long as you're going out there still trying, getting the internships, getting the real world experiences, interviews and stuff like that, I think that hands-on experience is going to be way more valuable. I think it's also kind of once you know what you want to do in the industry, you can go back and take those classes with a newfound perspective.
Right.
For instance, I took after my first agency internship, I took a how to sell radio advertising class.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it was interesting, to say the least. I forget what the name of the class was, but the professor was an adjunct professor who worked at Clear Channel Outdoor.
Which I don't even think they offer that class anymore.
No,
Maybe 'cause
probably
it's
not.
exactly relevant anymore.
But the marketing
Yeah.
classes that they do offer at UCF are so outdated. And I was actually a marketing major for a while and just recently switched to economics because it's heavier on the math and stuff.
Right.
So something that you said, though, just a second ago was that being in the industry and then coming back and taking those classes with a new perspective, you're younger than me and I'm further behind you in
right.
school.
And I took the intro classes, intro to advertising, intro to public relations before I'd ever had experience. And then all the other 6 or 7 classes I took after I had at least one internship at an agency, and there's definitely a disconnect between like
Right.
So I think the best way to go about this would be understanding that the education is more of a foundation
Right.
for whatever industry you're in.
More
right?
life skills.
Understanding what campaigns mean, understanding what media is, what types of media there are, what brand means, right? So the foundation groundwork, understand that that's what it's for. But I really think before you even go into internships is have a conversation with someone that's in the industry and pick their brain. Not from an internship perspective, because you might get 3 years down the line, 4 years senior year, and finally get an internship and realize you might hate it.
Right.
But have a conversation with someone that actually is in that career, in that industry, and just sit down and interview them and see, does
That's
it
what
make
I did
sense?
a lot. My cousin had graduated 3 or 4 years before I started college, and talking to him really opened up kind of my perspective on what advertising was and how you really get a job, because he's kind of able to tell me like this is like what they're looking for and this stuff doesn't really matter kind of thing. So I guess not everybody has that opportunity, but definitely yeah.
But you, like I said, a friend of mine actually was saying, I want to get into nursing. And I looked at her, I was just like, this was obviously when I was in college, and I was just like, maybe you need to go talk to a nurse before you make that decision. Because her main objective was, well, it's a great market to get into because there's a lot of jobs open and it pays well. And I'm like, dude, that definitely should not be the main
The
indicator
reason
or
why
the
you're
reason
doing
why
it.
you're
That'll be
getting
good
that
the first
degree.
year or two, but you don't want
Yep.
to be doing that another 20
But I was
Hating
like,
your
if
life.
you do not care about people and service and hospitality and helping
Not cut
others,
out, yeah.
you're going to hate that job. So I literally just told her, hey, go in the hospital and say, hey, can I talk to one of your lead nurses and just want to interview her and find out if this is something I want to get into. And I think that goes for any industry, really, not just for this one. But to really understand what the job entails, the day-to-day, and saying, okay, this is the path I kind of want to go down and explore more. And then that's where you kind of have the mindset of building a foundation rather than getting all the knowledge to do the job. It's more of the foundation work to help you gain the resources outside of school to learn how to do the job in its form now, not what's in the
Right.
textbook.
And also what kind of sucks about having to pick your major and everything so early is that
You don't know what
just
you
like getting a job, you could be doing it for 2 years and then know or find out that you hate it,
Right.
right? So you could be deep into, some college program, realize that you hate it, and then you're kind of stuck with it. So it's something that I did. I actually took a year off before deciding on a major to work, and then found out what I wanted to do working, and then went back to school.
I'm guessing it wasn't waiting tables.
It was not waiting tables,
Okay.
no.
It wasn't your
No.
dream and your passion.
That I definitely hated. Do know a lot of people that went to school for hospitality, though.
This is very true.
A lot.
Especially in this industry, in
It's
this
a
area.
very competitive.
In this area, yeah.
Very
definitely.
competitive.
But yeah, I think that's probably the best bet is before the even internships, it is
You have to have a
going and
conversation with
talking
somebody,
and have
yeah.
a real conversation with someone really in the industry, because that will help you understand.
Yeah, even myself, like
your
when I
gauge.
started getting into this, what I thought advertising was and what marketing was is not anything like it actually is. I mean,
We're not Mad Men.
no, there's not a lot of scotch here.
Wish there was, but there
Not
isn't.
a lot of indoor smoking either. But.
What did you think advertising and digital marketing would be like?
So I always had a feeling that I wanted to do copywriting because that was the most like stable writing job. Didn't want to be an author or a disturbed artist. So I figured out that copywriting was kind of lined up with my skills and passion. I just thought it was a lot of kicking my feet up and coming up with a lot of ideas. And while that is part of it, it's a lot more research. I would say I thought writing the creative things is about 80%, and it's not. Research is like 80%,
Yep.
and then it's the final execution. So I think that balance of how much time you have to put into an idea to make it good was something I understated the importance of.
I think that's
So-
probably one of the biggest things that people don't realize is that the job is 80-90% research.
Oh, yeah.
Very
And
little
I feel like,
implementation.
at least from a copywriting standpoint, good writers are generally good writers, and they always can brush up on their skills. But if you're a good writer, you just have to focus on the research. And I think, from my perspective, focusing on what other departments do, which has been the biggest thing for me, focusing on strategy, even a little bit of web development, understanding those things so you can have conversations with people and understand where people are coming from instead of just saying, oh, I'm a copywriter, I don't need to know, what the strategy team is doing or anything like that.
So would you feel that before you got too deep into your degree that you found out what copywriting really was like before it was taking feedback and thinking of ideas, right? So you had this fantasy idea of what copywriting is in the beginning.
Right.
And then there's some type of transition when you realize this is the real world scenario of what it is and you still enjoyed it.
Definitely.
Right? So
yeah, definitely.
So is it just luck that made you say, oh, this is actually what I want to do instead of like, oh, damn it, and have to turn it
What
on
is your
something
major?
else?
Advertising public relations.
Advertising public.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had this thought that like every piece of copyright needs to be award winning, needs to win an Addy. You need to be on Adweek for it, and that's just not true or sustainable because nobody's that creative or that good. And so I think the switch to realize that my writing needs to sell and it needs to deliver results versus needs to deliver awards, because that stuff is cool, but that's not what the client is after.
Right.
They don't care if they do, they care. It's awesome if your work gets an award for it, but that's not why they're contracting you to do it. So I think that switch to realize like I really need to know my stuff and research a topic instead of just sitting there and trying to be creative. I think putting that clarity in front of the creativity aspect really put it in focus and like, okay, I need to focus on getting research and getting my head straight with what's going on.
The funny thing about awards is having come from multiple agencies and also having been involved with the local Addies for a while was one of the things that we found was that the majority of campaign and copywriting ideas that are going in for awards are not even like big campaigns or even prominent campaigns or even campaigns that worked. It's just whatever the agency liked best.
Right.
It's all
Everything
brand.
That's
It's
actually
all
gonna tell
brand.
you that
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
aesthetically pleasing.
All
It didn't even drive the best results usually.
Yeah.
I've had situations where I've written really clever things and I'm like, oh man, this is gold, and I'll show it to somebody and they're like, I don't get it. And so I sit there for 5-10 minutes explaining what it is, and then finally it clicks to them, oh, that's what it is. But when you're writing these things towards just the average consumer,
Exactly.
they don't have the time in their day, especially now, to just sit and figure out things. I don't know if you guys saw the Volvo ad a couple years ago with the stepdad and the wedding day. Anyway,
I'm not sure.
Okay, there's a stepfather, and so the commercial was going between two different plots, but it was to sell a car, and so everybody's like, oh man, this is the most emotionally pleasing ad, but I didn't get what it was, and I was just confused. I was like, oh, this might be
And then a
clever,
Volvo
creative.
pulls up at the end.
Yeah, but it's not driving any
Right.
results or anything. We're just they're being creative for creativity's sake versus being clear. And so I think understanding that, I was like, okay, that changes things up a little bit, but I still want to do this because it's better than being an author. So, and then I also
More
didn't
stable.
understand why an agency would pay somebody a full salary just to kick their feet up and be creative. I'm like, there's got to be more substance to this, something you pay for besides just somebody being creative. And so,
Well, I think
learning that.
it's a little of both, right?
Yeah.
So, in our industry, the creative is the variable, right? That's
Yeah.
the thing that differentiates good results and bad results,
Right.
Because majority of it is handled by us in the back end,
Right.
and we target appropriately. That's all quantifiable evidence. But the variable and the subjective thing is the creative, right?
I think,
But good creative is subjective.
yeah.
So that's the difficult part.
I think it was learning the balance for me.
Correct.
And I think as a copywriter, I have to have one foot in reality with the strategy side, and then one foot in creativity land, coming up with the ideas. And I think it's just keeping a balance of both and realizing you have to please both sides versus just the creative side, which is how I thought it was before I started getting into this. How do I differentiate myself from everybody else who's trying to get this job? Because it doesn't seem like there's enough jobs for people with advertising degrees. So how do I differentiate myself and get ahead?
build experience, build knowledge. I think that's the biggest thing. In this day and age, you don't need a quote-unquote professional position to build experience, right? So, and I think gaining as much knowledge as possible and how to present that in a way where we can digest it and understand and you know what the hell you're doing, right? I think that's probably for our industry and specifically for our department is the best way to do it. I don't care about you. I can think of a couple of ideas that people have done. Sent the agency pizza and put his resume underneath of it. Made a game where you had to unlock the resume. There's a lot of creative ways of doing it.
I've gotten resumes before that like had like audio to them. Yeah. Like you open them up and they start playing music and stuff like that.
Oh, like MySpace.
No, like those cards that you spend like $10 at Publix for send to your dad when you forgot his birthday.
So I hear.
Hypothetical, but yeah. Sorry.
No, I would just say, though, especially for this industry particularly, there's so much – you don't even need the experience at, like, another business. Right. Like, just say, like, for you, example, like, as a copywriter, you can just go start your own blog and just start writing about anything. Start a social media page about your favorite, books or something and just start writing about them. And you can bring that to an agency, be like, look, I have 500 followers on this blog or whatever, but I write it every week. And especially like for us, like we could just throw up a pop-up, drop shipping store. And if somebody came up to us, at least for me, you would have to speak more on it because you interviewed a lot more people than I have. But if somebody came up and maybe they didn't have, an agency job before, but they had actually built something themselves, I think that alone says a lot more. Do you think it's the
attempt to make a connection between what they're doing now as much as they can versus what they want to do? Is it that trying to bridge what attempts you've done with what the job
it's relevance and results. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah.
Like if it's relevant to what we do on a regular basis, that I know you can do the job and you drive results because that's all I care about, then you're above and beyond anyone that just has a degree.
Right.
The differentiator is the results, is the experience, is the knowledge, not so much what's on your resume and what jobs you have, but what can you do.
Yeah.
Right.
So like if you have a blog or if you have experience with an agency either through an internship or another job or something else, and you're able to speak to those results, like you can say that not only do I have 500 followers, but I have this much repeat traffic and they spend this much time on my
site.
engagement,
and that type of stuff, and then not only that, but being able to speak the language, and when you're speaking results, you're speaking our language,
right?
But that's for this job particularly, and I think
that's
that,
what I'm saying.
Like what you were saying with like having conversations with people in the industry, you don't even really need to do that. I mean, you should. I definitely am not saying don't.
Right.
But you could go to people just on LinkedIn who have that job capacity, look at their resume, and then also that like skills thing at the bottom where people like endorse you and stuff. So like if someone came to ours, like, mine has like PPC, SEO, and SEM. Yeah, you just look at that and you're like, okay, I don't know what PPC is. Let me Google it. And then you get 9,000 things like best ways to do PPC and stuff.
A bunch of courses being sold.
You just start doing it though.
Crap.
Yeah, you just start getting engaged with it, and then you learn on your own. Like you can absolutely do that.
Like, I think that's what it comes down to. Is it's not differentiating yourself to get your foot in the door. It's being knowledgeable and having a conversation, because that's the only way I can gauge, like, what you're about, right?
Being able to have the conversation.
If you tell me how Facebook algorithm works and how, you can segment audiences accordingly and how to do it and the results you drove by changing X, Y, and Z to optimize the campaign. If you're having this conversation with me, that's hard to fake, right? On your resume, copy and paste, fine, whatever.
Right.
That's a vetting process. That's whatever.
That gets you in the door, but that doesn't get you the job.
Correct. And I usually don't really care too much about a resume. The things I hate is the unquantifiable things, the qualifying metrics of 4.5 stars out of 5 for Photoshop. That bothers the hell out of me, because as someone that measures results, how are you measuring your skill set based on stars or dots or whatever it is? It's just your opinion of what your expertise is in that skill set, right? So that's why I look at our guys. I'm like, if we're based on quantifiable evidence, how are you sitting there and giving me subjective thoughts about your own skill?
What would you say for somebody who's more creative focused, who wants to be more so on the creative team in terms of building their portfolio, and how does that differ from a strategist? Because obviously the strategy is going to be a lot of numbers.
Well, I think, again, this would be a great question for a creative director.
Yeah.
But
Concepts.
well, yeah. So I guess it's two things.
Concepts and
If you're a
campaigns.
conceptual
Yeah.
designer,
Yeah.
conceptual designer, it's all about concepts, branding, the understanding of what the objective is and how it met the objective,
Consistency.
but explaining it too, not just showing it.
Right.
Right. Saying this is the reason why I did what I did. Right?
The feelings behind it.
Correct. Like the tone and the brand, what was it saying, and how did I execute that individual aspect? That's a great way of doing it. You're basically building a case study for your own work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? When it comes to like UX, that has a more psychology and data behind it to say, this is the reason I put this button here, this is the reason that this slide is working here, this is the reason this form is here, right? So based on the job, I guess, and your skill
changes
set,
slightly.
based on a designer, because there are a variety of different types of designers, you kind of build your resume by still quantifying kind of your thought process and the process to get to the end result. It's not always the end result.
So would you say overall it's quantifying your...
For creative, it's a little more
more so
subjective. Like I
quantifying-
said, this is what I said: is creative is the subjective part of this industry.
So
right?
it's more so just defending
defending yourself
What,
on it.
Well, I think what it comes down to is passion and personality when it comes to creative work. Because just like, being able to speak the language of PPC, it's really hard to fake passion. Like I've met plenty of designers and copywriters who have really long portfolios and examples of creative work, but like when you go through them, you could see that like this was done because the client asked it to, and this change was made because I kind of needed to do it, and I think. For creatives, it comes down to your own personal brand and being able to take those subjective things, those things that are unquantifiable like passion, and really make it stand out that way. And I think I think it varies depending on the creative job. If it's video work versus design versus copy, and there's a million different ways to do it. But your decision on how you execute that is kind of showing your personality in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. For a college student who has got their 4-year degree, what's enough experience? Like, what defines enough experience to get a job? And I know that is a really broad question, but in your opinion,
Get a job or an internship?
they've gotten their 4-year degree, they've done 1 or 2 internships and that kind of thing, and they want to get a job now.
But that's the thing. If it's just a degree and just internships, then we have a problem. In this industry, in this field, we have a problem if that's all you did.
How do you mean?
That's the status quo of I got my degree and I got 2 internships, but I did nothing else outside of those things. Then you just followed what your guidance counselor told you to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, you need this internship to graduate, so you better do it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just fell in line with everyone else. You're the status quo of everyone that graduates. What did you do outside of that? What have you learned outside of school? What is your passion driving you to know more of?
Right. I was at the guidance counselor the other day, just making sure all my credits were good to graduate, and she's like, "Oh wow, you have a lot of experience," and I was like, "Yeah, it's because I'm trying to get a job after I graduate. I'm not just trying to, do whatever." But she's like, everybody who comes through here is just like, "All right, internship, cool. Let me check that off the box. All right, I got this certification for this class. Let me check that off the box." And I was kind of taken back by, in an industry like that's so competitive like this and so passion driven, how are people just kind of floating by and thinking that, all right, let me check this off the box?
Not even learning the right stuff.
They're in for
Right,
a
right.
very rude awakening.
Right.
Well,
when they're
I think in relation to UCF in particular, it's how they run their major.
Sorry if you're at UCF and you
I'm
work
not
there.
sorry. I
3 people who went to UCF right here still do.
I never went. I started with the ad PR program, and I actually had to drop out of that and change my major because I never met the GPA
Which happens to a lot of
requirements.
people. Yeah.
And like, you know,
You're stupid.
I had a girlfriend at the time who was in the program, and so, like, you know, I, like, was with her, like, through, like, all these capstone projects and, you know, these really big team building things, and a lot of the people I met were just, first of all, they just didn't know or care what they wanted. They were just, like, doing it, you know, like, you know, because public relations sounds fun or advertising sounds fun. First of all, those shouldn't be the same major.
Right.
But, like, you know, you just have so many people who are going through there, and, like, you know, the program is letting them in because of the GPA requirement, and it's not really vetting them to see.
I will say, too,
why.
the people that have the mindset of, all right, let me check off this class, check off this internship, and check off graduation, also have the idea that they'll just check off getting a job.
Yeah.
Right.
And they underestimate what's needed to get in that position. It's not just the next step. It's a leap.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you, or I'm going to give an example for all soon-to-be graduates or people who are still in school of how to do it. Trevor, how many years of experience do you have in this industry?
3?
3. When are you graduating?
2019, maybe?
There's your answer.
That's the reason. I don't care about your degree, to be honest with you. No offense to all the colleges out there and the parents. I don't really care about the degree. I care about the experience. He found his way and built his experience actually working in this industry. How did he do it? He learned on his own. No one taught him. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I care about. Like, would you rather have a mechanic?
Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome, buddy. Would you rather have a mechanic that has 10 years experience working on your car than a guy that just graduated with whatever degree it is for working on an engine?
Right, and
but never actually worked on an engine before.
That's why I put so much emphasis on while I was in school and while I still am in school to actually get experience instead of being part of clubs and organizations. And there's nothing wrong with those. There's great networking opportunities if that's what you're into and that's what you want to do. But I never got into them, never got involved on campus, and I just chose to spend my time outside of class learning and doing internships because that's going to get me experience and not being part of an organization.
Well, I think still being part of organization is good, but I think that's not a supplement of.
Right.
It's added on to. For instance, how did you meet Carrie, the partner of 321?
That was at a exchange event at the UCF, which is like a panel type thing. And he was just talking. They were talking about digital marketing. I went up to him after, told him that I'd been doing stuff in the field or whatever, and then he told me to come in immediately.
Right, but why were you at the event?
Oh, for a class.
Right. So, networking, right?
I'm not downplaying.
No, I'm not either.
Yeah.
I'm saying the clubs also get you in the door of agencies if you're doing the tours or whatever it is, and you can get someone's business card and you might have a conversation, right? Now, I'm not saying being the ad club gives you, or whatever club it is, gives you access, and that's what it is. It is the networking part.
That's more so what I was going off.
Of making your own.
It's a supplement, but I had very limited time between my classes and everything, so very limited time. I'm like, I'm going to spend this doing internships rather than
if you have one or the other, right?
That's, I was in the situation of a one or the other.
Right.
Which one am I going to do?
To pick the experience, obvious, right? Mm-hmm. But if you can do both, great. Then you're just adding more value to yourself. That's all. But I think that's the biggest thing for me is you can build experience, right? He learned. He actually went in because strategically he went in for another job. It's like customer service or something, right?
Yeah.
And then he transitioned into what he actually wanted to become at that company, and then took that experience, and then that's how he got here, right? So
and it sucked.
It it will, but strategically,
you don't like talking to angry people.
Yeah, strategically, you have to make those decisions, right? Like it's the process to get to where you're at, not just the end result to get where you're at. And if you understand that the foundation of education is not built for the process, it's just built for the end result, then I think you'll have an eye-opening experience of how to get a career.
So my last question, which has already pretty much been answered, was how do I get experience outside of a formal internship? And the reason why I asked that is because a lot of what I hear is, well, I can't get an internship because I've never done an internship. Like I can't get hired for an internship position because I don't have anything prior.
Yeah.
So what would you say to somebody who is in that situation. And this question's pretty much already been answered because it's do what you can. It's so easy now. You can start a drop shipping site.
Yep.
You can start doing spec ads. My first copywriting formal project was done through with Clayton, who's another intern here, and we did it for a family friend of his who had an interior design organization, and that was like my first thing, and I ran with it. And when I showed that to internship employers,
Perfect.
they were like, all right, you know, it needs work, but you have the idea down and you're self-starter because you looked out those opportunities instead of just they're not going to be handed to you. And so that's what kind of got me in. So yeah, the question's been answered, but that was the last one that I had here.
Self-starter thing, I think, is the biggest.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, I think I think we already answered it, but
Yeah.
that's something we definitely need to focus on. Is in this day and age, I think you have a lot more opportunity than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah.
I think that goes back to how accessible information is now, and the fact that we were just talking a couple hours ago about how you can just Google stuff now. You don't need to ask somebody, especially if it's like a functional thing and not like an opinion. Like, how do I edit a campaign, or how do I upload, you know, CSV file? You can just Google that. You don't have to ask somebody.
Which is so funny, though, because everybody knows that, and only a small percentage of people actually do it.
Yeah. Oh my god.
It
I know
kills
all
me.
my friends.
Oh my god.
Whenever they ask me a question, I'm like, did you Google it? Like,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's real fucking simple.
Yeah.
You know?
Actually asking somebody to tell you about it probably takes longer than just Googling it 90% of the time.
Yeah, it's funny because even here sometimes you have to,
Yeah.
you know, pull that trigger on some people.
Yeah.
Like, hey, how do I do this? Add this field on Campaign Monitor. And I'm like, did you Google it?
I'm
Right.
guilty of it myself
no.
too.
Some of the
sometimes,
things that we
you know?
talk about, though, is like
Yeah.
there's no documentation on it, and you would have
Yeah,
had to just
yeah.
figure it out yourself. So it's
Right.
like, all right, I'll ask you about it.
No, I
you
get,
know?
I get that because it's actually easier if you lean over and look at it and be like, oh, click that and click that. Than
Right.
actually Googling it, have to filter through all the results to find the right instruction on how to do it. I get all that, but majority of the time,
It's just the overall concept is if you
do it yourself and then ask why.
Yeah.
Right.
Or how.
What? Well, one of the things that we didn't talk about, and that is like, you know, I understand why you asked that question, because it's this whole catch-22 of like, you know, I don't have enough experience to get a job, and I can't get a job without experience. You know, that we all kind of find ourselves in, and I want to like the only answer to be self-starter, because I think there are other ways and other opportunities. Getting in with friends like you did, to find a project. I think it's all about finding that project, and it doesn't have to be by yourself. You don't have to build a drop shipping company by yourself. One great avenue that I recommend to anybody is get involved in a professional organization. There are organizations around the country like Add2, which every single year they take on a public service client, and they get media donated to them. They get a bunch of volunteers to donate graphic design work, copywriting, media buying work, web development, pretty much anything. And they put on a full campaign for a client pro bono. So that's a great opportunity to get experience right there.
My mentality, I guess, was coming into college was I understand that I need to have some experience outside of an internship. My thing was, I guess just the way I approached it was, it doesn't need to be amazing. It just needs to show that I understand what self-starting is.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know my first copywriting project is not going to be amazing, but I just want to show that like I'm hungry for an opportunity to get better at it versus just waiting for somebody to hand me one.
And don't be afraid to do anything for free.
Yeah,
That is such a thing that I think people take the hardest. I'm not
especially
getting
when
paid
you
for
start
it.
off. Especially when you start off.
Here's the thing. If you're really good at it, get paid for it. But how do you know you're really good at it until you actually do it?
Exactly.
Right.
And have results.
Exactly. Like that's
It's getting that practice.
It is.
It's going out there, finding a project, whatever that project is, with whatever group of people it is. If it's by yourself, with an organization, friends, coworkers, something. If it's just like, you and a bunch of friends like have this idea for a funny site, put it together. Funny blog, put it together. That's taking the initiative.
Just to see if it works.
Just do it. Just like what's his name? Shia LaBeouf. Just do it.
Yeah, like
Shia LaBeouf.
So, not in a professional sense, but you don't get paid to practice.
Right. And it's like my mindset was when I'm doing my first copywriting thing, I have experience writing, but not in copywriting format, and I can't just tell somebody I'm good at something. They want to see results, and they want to see experience. Oh wait, I don't have that. Guess I'm gonna have to do this for free. And it's just kind of the grunt work, but the grunt work is what propels you to getting paid for your work. And I think that's like a gap that not a lot of people want to cross, but it's necessary.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's interesting because you came in as a customer service agent in an agency, or not agency, but a tech
E-commerce.
job, e-commerce tech job. You started, how did you start out? Like what job in agency world did you start out?
I mean, agency-wise, internships.
And
like,
of what, though? It wasn't a strategist.
I had a graphic design internship at one point. Yeah, I actually two. I forgot about that one in high school. Graphic design. I mean, I was working around people who were working within advertising. I had my pirated version of Photoshop. Just kind of doing the thing.
Like
Didn't
every high
everybody?
schooler.
So I mean, it's graphic design doesn't have a whole lot to do with what I do on my day to day, but I feel like it informs.
Well,
Concepts.
it's just the
Concepts,
foot
yeah.
in to understand what you need to do. That's all I'm getting at.
and it
For
helped
instance,
guide me to what I wanted to do.
I was a marketing coordinator. Was my first paid job for like traditional marketing. Like that's
You were a coordinator for your
Yeah.
first paid job?
yeah. I was a marketing coordinator.
How did that happen?
Coordinator's
I
pretty
understood
entry
marketing.
Is
I
it?
understood
Yeah.
marketing.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking like supervisor, like...
No, coordinator.
not vice president. No,
Okay. I'm wrong.
Entry level,
That's
yeah.
All right.
supervisor.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was very low end, and they're like, "Oh, you have a passion for marketing. You understand the concepts of it. You understand the process of it. So entry level, hey, you help with your friend's startup to do marketing. That's literally how I got the job, and it was about like traditional like posters and flyers and all that
Right.
crap. And that's how I got my foot in the door. Now that also helped me understand the plethora of jobs in tech and in digital, and I got to start seeing that opened my eyes to what I really wanted to do.
Understanding all of it.
Correct, because I didn't. From the outside, if I tell you what a digital strategist is, unless you Google it, it's a made-up title.
Hell, even
5
if
years
you
ago.
Google it, it's a made
It
up
is
title.
There's a lot of different position titles for that same job, right? So all of us just got our foot in the door in some capacity to really figure it out, right?
Do you have a question for you that just came up? Because even looking back on, I've kind of, between stuff that I've done on my own and internships, I've had about a year and a half of experience, year and a half. And even looking back in that really small amount of time, I've seen like, man, I wish I would have done things differently or started earlier is the biggest thing. Wish I would have started earlier.
Right. Yeah.
But you guys have been in the industry much longer than I have. Looking back on your own experience, if you could each speak to just part of it, like what's one thing you wish you would have done sooner or would have not done?
I think personally for me it was learning more math and caring about it. Probably.
All right, next.
Just saying, like seriously, like I think one of the biggest things that really irks me about going through high school and going through college is when I was taking my math classes, it was like that stereotypical thought of I'm never going to use this in the real world.
But it's more so the linear and logical thinking.
It is.
That, yeah,
it's definitely the critical thinking, but also, I mean, a lot of the concepts. So like coming in, and we always say that when we do our job, 10% of it is actual like the thinking behind it, and then 90% of it is the actual knowledge of how to use the platform and understanding metrics and things like that. So it's being able to interpret data is like a huge thing, and just having those more advanced math skills, you just pick it up immediately just because you understand the thought behind it. So that's something that I really wish that I had taken to heart earlier.
Yeah, I don't want to copy your answer, but I like I mentioned earlier, I kind of started as more of creative type. Doing graphic design, Photoshop, Illustrator, and design, that type of stuff.
So sorry for that client.
Yeah, no, just shut up. I know it's bad, and I wish that I had pursued this form of advertising earlier than I did. Because it really wasn't until my junior year where I really found that the media department, and working with the strategy and the numbers and web analytics and like all those types of things. That's where I felt more comfortable. But at the same time, had I not done those other internships, I don't think I would have gotten the experience to get that media
to know that's what you want to do.
Know that I want to do.
Right.
But that it's out there at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and to your point, like I didn't know what it was. I didn't, even like when I started my media internship. The very first day, the digital media director closed the door to our office and scared the shit out of me. Where telling me that listen, like advertising isn't sexy, it's not fun. Get out of here while you still can, type of thing. And if I didn't have that come to Jesus, like I don't think I would have really accepted the job for what it is and really embraced what it is.
Yeah.
I'd say for me it was be a little more humble and add a little more patient, be more patient, because I kind of came up in the way where digital marketing was really in its infancy. Like Facebook didn't even have advertising at that point, right? Google AdWords was a thing. Email marketing, that was really it. And display banners. And you'd have to actually go to most of the websites and actually purchase display banners.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So it was on the cusp of, and I felt I was so ahead of the game, understanding where it was going to go, that I looked down upon all the traditional marketing and the operations of it, and really trying to saying I'm better than this. Like, this is stupid. Why aren't you thinking this way yet? And they just weren't ready. And I should have just sat there and digested where they're at and not where they should be, right? Like, in tech, we all kind of have this little arrogance about our industry. If you ever watch Silicon Valley, you know what I'm talking about.
Richard Hendricks, my dog.
So it was that. It was just like, oh, well, you don't see the future. You don't understand, blah, 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 blah. Instead of just honing in and digesting the experience, right, of what is really going on right now, the creative aspect, even from a traditional side of how people do it on a day-to-day, because I think I would have learned my lesson a lot quicker. That's all.
Yeah, and going off that, too, is whenever I feel like I've kind of made it for where I'm at and I'm doing pretty good, even if you say you don't, you start coasting, and then people start passing you. And so I think, yeah, being humble about it and still knowing that you will never know everything, you'll never understand it, and if there's a concept to understand, you should probably
That's what I'm
be
saying.
chasing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think people
Well said.
Agreed, 100%. People need to fall in love with the process of always going, because you're never going to hit an end to this. Right, we're always going to be learning something new. It's forever changing.
Too
Every
quickly
day.
to learn
so
everything. Yeah.
you have to love the process of learning and figuring out things and failing. And if you understand that concept, I think that's where we start succeeding.
And I
Right.
think going back to the questions I'd asked before, if you're not the type of person who constantly loves to learn, and you're not like a life learner type of person, this industry changes too quickly, and I don't think you'll.
Good luck.
Yeah.
There's no way to put your feet up.
It has to be ingrained into you to always be wanting to
You
learn.
can't fake this.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. You can't fake having a passion for this, because you will be found out pretty quickly when everyone else is so much far ahead of you, because you just don't care. Like, it's not where you can fake it till you make it. It's you literally have to have a passion for it and drive and want to know and learn more on a regular without anyone pushing you. Because
I remember one of the first things that we spoke about when I started here was, like, especially in an agency atmosphere, you can't fake being productive. You have to pull your weight.
Right.
And in other situations, it might be a little easier to slack and just kind of ride by, but especially
like I said, if you're in a big corporation, it's difficult when you're just a number,
Right.
a cog in a machine. Here, it is like you only have 25 parts.
Yeah.
Right. It's easier. Like I made the analogy. It's easier to see which light bulbs burn out if there's only 25 light bulbs on a Christmas tree, right?
That's the exact analogy you used. I remember that too.
Because it's true.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot easier to see who's the brightest star and who's the dimmest one, because we have to rely so much on each other to get things done. So we actively see who's not holding their weight, and that also goes the opposite way. You can actively see who is like killing it right now, who is a rock star, who is really in it and has passion for it and drive, because they're the ones that are lifting up everyone else around them. So like I said, it goes both ways, right? So if you are a go-getter, if you are a self-learner, if you are someone that has passion for this industry, 9 times out of 10 you will succeed here in this kind of environment. If you do not, you will be found very quickly. If you faked it in the interview and somehow you got hired,
Somehow you got a job.
you will be found out pretty quickly that
You just can't pull the
you
weight.
can't hold it.
And you'll be stressed.
Oh.
Very, very stressed.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of pressure. Pressure makes diamonds, also bust pipes.
Yeah. I think just off that note is at the same time it is never a bad thing to be humble. It's never a bad thing to admit when you don't know something because that's when you're most open to learning. So like let's say you do get in that situation where you found yourself in a job where you might not be able to pull your weight, but the worst thing you can do is not ask anyone for help.
Right.
Keep pretending to know.
Yeah, keep pretending to know, and that will
Time
definitely
is
be your
limited.
downfall. Yeah.
Just remember to Google first before you ask.
And remember that Matt Damon got a Harvard education with nothing more than a library card. Good Will Hunting.
Yes.
Nobody got that.
I got it. I think I'm the only one.
Yeah, that was all the questions that I had. But if we still have time, I would think, what is something that you see very flawed with the kids coming out of school now?
No critical thinking.
Okay.
They trust their teachers.
I was going to go off that when Jeff said take what your professors are saying with a grain of salt, especially in a creative role. I was told my copy wasn't really great and that I shouldn't do this because I was just very average.
By a teacher?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
But I just kept pushing through. I was like, well, somebody else told me I was pretty good, so I'm going to keep doing this until somebody tells me otherwise. And so I think it's, especially in the creative roles where things are subjective and you can't quantify your reasons for liking or not liking creative work besides it's not good. I think taking what your professors say with a grain of salt, and a lot of them aren't in the industry actively.
Exactly.
And so they
For years.
Yeah, they might be going off things that are 3 or 4 years old, and in digital marketing terms, that's decades.
Do what we did to a couple of my college professors and look them up on LinkedIn. Check out their resumes.
Oh no. Oh yeah. I remember that. Yeah, they have
we won't
no
name any
experience.
names, but
No experience
just
whatsoever with teaching.
look them up on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and then use that information to weigh their opinions
Credibility
on things. I think if I had professors that were ADDIE award-winning copywriters, I would definitely be eating up everything they were saying. But when it's not in that situation, I just kind of write it off.
Well, it's also
that's an
understanding the
opinion.
program you're in, right?
Yeah.
So if it's like the SCAD program,
It's a lot different than the UCF.
a little different than exactly like SCAD designers. They are legit because they have their portfolio prior to getting in the program needs to be approved by the department,
Right.
before they even get into the degree.
Man.
Like they have a very, very good vetting process for a talent pool because they keep it. They want to have validity of the degree that they get and the name.
They don't want
Right.
to tarnish it with work that isn't up to
Correct.
standard.
Exactly. So for those, I say, obviously college to college is very different, right? But what comes down to it is if you mix standard education, like college, with self-education, you'll find a good balance of how to vet information from both sides.
Yeah. I think you'll also more easily be able to call bullshit on teachers if you're self-taught.
Yep.
Because there's plenty of professors and teachers that I've had in my life who I love and respect and adore and do not agree with.
Yeah, definitely.
So I mean, like you said, or like you said, like I said, take it with a grain of salt.
Phrase of the day.
Yeah.
I think it's mixing what Dan was saying about being humble and being critiqued, but still not let that be the
end
final
all.
truth of
Right.
whatever you're doing is.
Like I remember a coworker. This is the reason why my arrogance kind of grew a little bit is he said the Palm Pre was going to be the next phone because I told him the iPhone is going to be it's going to evolve everything else in mobile. It's going to change the way technology is looked at. And he said, I don't think so. I think the Palm Pre is going to be. I think the iPhone's just a fad.
The hell's a Palm Pre?
Exactly.
Exactly.
All right, everyone. I appreciate it, Ali.
Yeah,
You're
no
a
problem.
scholar and a gentleman.
Hopefully
you.
we answered your questions.
Definitely.
And hopefully we answered your questions. If you have any, comment below, like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time.